She whispered it so quietly that only the walls could hear her. "Please don't hurt me. I can't walk." The groom didn't flinch. His grip on her wrist tightened, hard enough to bruise. Cameras flashed, guests applauded. No one saw the tears hidden beneath her veil. In that moment, she wasn't a bride. She was a hostage dressed in white. And somewhere in the crowd, a man watched, older, colder, richer, whose single decision would soon destroy everything this wedding was built on. If you're just tuning in, welcome to tonight's story. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing how far our stories travel. And if you believe that secrets always surface, hit subscribe now, because what's about to happen at this wedding will change every life in that room. The vows were never finished. The words stuck in her throat like glass. Sienna Brooks Vale, barely 26, trembling in silk, stood beside a man who didn't even look at her. Ethan Vale, the billionaire's son, the city's golden heir, smiling for the cameras while crushing her fingers beneath his hand. Everyone saw perfection. No one saw pain. The priest spoke of love, but there was none here. Only a contract sealed in whispers, a promise paid for in silence. And in that silence she begged, "Please don't hurt me, I can't walk." Her words vanished beneath applause. Across the aisle, Richard Vale, the groom's father, watched with eyes that hid too much. He didn't blink. He didn't move. Something in the bride's voice had cracked through the armor he'd worn for years. The guests cheered, the camera lights flared, and in that moment, 3 lives collided under a roof built on lies. "Kiss your bride," the priest said, but Ethan didn't. He leaned close instead, his breath cold against her ear. "You'll learn your place soon enough." Her veil quivered. Her knees gave way slightly, but she forced herself to stand. Not for love, for survival. Outside, thunder rolled over Manhattan. The storm had begun long before the rain. They called it the wedding of the year, an empire's heir and a mysterious bride no one knew. Reporters waited outside the cathedral, gossip swirling like perfume. Who was she? Where did she come from? No one dared to ask the only question that mattered. Why did she look so afraid? When the ceremony ended, the crowd flooded the marble steps. Champagne glasses clinked, and the Vale family smiled for headlines that would print by morning. But inside the limousine, silence stretched like a wound. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks, his reflection sharp in the tinted glass. Sienna sat beside him motionless, hands folded tight against her lap. The city lights flickered across her veil, turning her tears into diamonds no one would ever notice. "You did well," he said flatly. "Now keep quiet. Father doesn't need to know anything else." Her lips parted, but she said nothing. There was no safe way to answer. Not tonight. The car slowed at a red light. Outside, a homeless man tapped the window, asking for change. Ethan turned away. Sienna reached into her clutch, slipping out a folded bill. Her hand trembled as she pressed it against the glass, but the man smiled, the first kindness she'd seen all day. "You don't belong in this world," Ethan muttered. "You'll understand soon." The rain grew heavier. The lights blurred. Somewhere far above them, Richard Vale stood at his penthouse window, watching the storm crawl over the skyline. The wedding was done, yet his unease deepened. Something in that girl's voice, broken, desperate, had pulled him into a memory he'd spent years burying. He whispered to no one, "It can't be her." Down below, Sienna turned to the window, her reflection ghostly against the city glow. "I'll survive this," she breathed, though even she didn't believe it. Hours after the ceremony, the rain still hadn't stopped. The Vale limousine cut through Fifth Avenue, its headlights slicing the storm in half. Inside, Sienna sat small against the leather seat, still in her gown, the hem soaked where it brushed the wet pavement earlier. The scent of lilies clung to her veil, mixed with fear. Ethan didn't speak. His phone buzzed twice. He ignored it. His jaw tightened with every streetlight that passed. "We're not done," he finally said. "Not until you learn to keep your head down." She turned toward the window, watching New York blur by like a dream she couldn't wake from. Somewhere out there, the world was celebrating her name, trending on social media, calling her lucky. None of them knew she couldn't feel her legs. The car stopped in front of the Vale Mansion, a fortress of glass and stone in Greenwich. Flashing lights from reporters reflected off the raindrops on her face. 2 guards opened the door. Cameras clicked. She forced a smile, the kind that hurt more than the truth. Inside, the air smelled of wealth and distance. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, portraits of people who never smiled. Richard Vale stood by the staircase, watching his son drag the woman he just married across the hall without a word. Richard's eyes narrowed. There was something familiar in the way she stumbled, the way she refused to cry even when pain painted her face. Upstairs, a single light burned through the storm, a wedding night in silence. 2 people lying beside each other, miles apart. In another room, Richard poured a glass of whiskey he wouldn't drink and whispered into the dark, "It can't be her." And somewhere between thunder and guilt, fate began to turn. Midnight, the hour when silence grows teeth. Sienna sat on the edge of the bed, still in her gown, her body aching from hours of pretending. The diamond ring felt like ice against her skin. She could hear Ethan in the next room, his voice low, angry, speaking to someone on the phone. Every word sounded like a verdict. "I did what you asked, Father. The deal's done. She's your problem now." Then the line went dead. She stared at the door, her heartbeat slowing until it hurt. That voice, that cold authority, had carried through the cathedral, through the limousine, through every moment she'd told herself was survival. And now, hearing it again, she realized something terrifying. This marriage had never been about her. She was part of something older, deeper, and crueler. The window shuddered with wind. She reached for her crutch and pulled herself toward the curtains, dragging the weight of satin behind her. Outside, the estate stretched across the hill like a sleeping beast. Gardens, fountains, shadows that never moved. Down below, a single figure crossed the courtyard, umbrella tilting against the storm. Richard Vale. He stopped halfway to the gate, looked up toward her window, and froze. Their eyes met for the first time without a crowd, without masks, and something inside him faltered. "It can't be her," he whispered again, as if saying it might make it true. Sienna stepped back from the glass, the hem of her dress catching on her crutch. She fell against the dresser, biting back a cry as pain shot through her leg. From outside, lightning flared, and for a split second, she saw it. A reflection behind her in the mirror. A tall man standing in the doorway, watching. "Ethan?" No answer. The light flickered out. The door clicked shut. And in that darkness, the bride who couldn't walk realized she might not make it through her own wedding night. The hours between midnight and dawn are when truth likes to whisper. Sienna didn't sleep. She sat on the floor near the window, her crutch fallen beside her, listening for footsteps. Every creak in the hallway sounded like a threat. The house was too big, too quiet, too rich to be kind. The lights from passing cars painted ghosts across the ceiling. She tried to calm her breathing, counting seconds between thunderclaps. Somewhere below, the grandfather clock struck 3. A knock. Soft, measured. She froze. Another knock. Closer this time. The door opened a crack, and light from the corridor spilled in. "Mrs. Vale," a man's voice, deep, older. She turned, her pulse sharp. Richard Vale stepped into the room, dressed in black, his hair damp from the rain. He looked at her the way someone looks at a photograph they shouldn't recognize. "I didn't mean to frighten you," he said quietly. "I wanted to make sure you were settling in." "Your son doesn't talk to me," she murmured. "He talks at me." Richard studied her, the faint tremor in her hand, the way she shifted her weight to hide her weakness. He saw defiance wrapped in pain, and something about it clawed at him. "You remind me of someone," he said. She looked up, her eyes tired but steady. "Someone who couldn't walk either." His silence was the answer. For a moment the storm outside filled the space between them. Then he placed something on the dresser, a folded paper envelope sealed in red wax. "This arrived for you earlier," he said. "No name, no sender, just your initials." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Lock your room tonight," he added. "The house remembers things we'd rather forget." When he was gone, Sienna opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph. Old, water-stained. A woman in a white dress standing beside a man whose face had been torn out. Behind them, the Vale mansion. On the back, a date was scribbled, June 14th, 1999, and beneath it, in neat handwriting, "The truth limps, but it always arrives." Her fingers trembled as she traced the words. That date, it was the same day her mother died. The rain returned, harder this time. Downstairs, Richard stood in his study, staring at an old newspaper clipping. "Woman killed in hit and run, driver never found." His hand shook as he reached for the whiskey. "God help me," he whispered. Then lightning flashed, and for a single second, the same photograph lay open on his desk, the same date, the same face. He dropped the glass. It can't be her. The storm swallowed the rest of his words. Morning came slowly to the Vale mansion. The sky was bruised, heavy with clouds that hadn't finished their work. Sienna hadn't moved from the window. The photo still lay open in her lap, its edges curling from the damp. She stared at it until the faces blurred, until she couldn't tell past from present anymore. A soft knock pulled her back. The housekeeper peeked in, eyes nervous. "Mr. Vale asked me to check on you," she said. "Breakfast will be ready soon." "Which one?" Sienna asked. The woman hesitated. "The father." Sienna's pulse quickened. "Tell him I'll be down." When the door shut, she pressed her palms to her face. Last night felt like a dream that had left bruises behind. Richard Vale, the man who should have been a stranger, had looked at her like he already knew her story. She changed into a pale blue dress that wasn't hers, something the stylists had left behind after the wedding. Every movement reminded her of pain, the slow rise from the bed, the way her legs stiffened when she tried to stand. But she wouldn't be pitied. Not today. Downstairs, sunlight pooled across the marble floors. Richard waited at the long dining table, newspaper folded beside a cup of untouched coffee. He looked up as she entered. "You didn't sleep," he said. "Neither did you." He nodded once, studying her. "My son should be here. Your son doesn't care." Silence stretched between them. He tapped his finger on the newspaper, eyes far away. "People make mistakes, Mrs. Vale. Some of them can't be fixed." She almost laughed. "I know." He pushed the envelope toward her, the same one she'd opened last night. "Where did you get this?" "It was left in my room." "Do you recognize the woman in the photograph?" "She's my mother." His hand froze halfway to the coffee cup. The color drained from his face. "What did you say?" "My mother, Evelyn Brooks. She died in a car crash, June 14th, 1999. Richard's breath caught. The chair legs scraped against marble as he stood. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he whispered, "Excuse me," and left the room without another word. She sat there, staring at the untouched coffee, realizing she had just handed a ghost his own confession. Upstairs, behind the closed office door, Richard pressed his forehead to the glass, whispering to the storm that hadn't really ended. "Evelyn, what have I done?" Richard Vale hadn't left the office for hours. The air smelled of whiskey and regret. He pulled open an old drawer, the one locked since the summer of '99, and spilled its contents onto the desk. Yellowed papers, a faded photograph, a silver bracelet bent out of shape. The bracelet still carried the engraving, E.B. Evelyn Brooks, the name that had haunted every deal, every boardroom victory, every sleepless night. He remembered the accident, The storm, the headlights, the scream. The police never found the driver. He made sure of that. But the envelope upstairs, the girl's voice, her mother's face staring back at him from 26 years ago. He couldn't deny what his mind already knew. "It's her," he whispered. "It's her daughter." Downstairs, Sienna moved through the mansion like a shadow. Every hallway seemed to hum with secrets. Portraits of strangers watched her pass. In the library, she found Ethan, the groom, the man she was supposed to trust. He stood beside the fireplace, scrolling through his phone, the screen lighting his sharp features. "You went through my things," he said, not looking up. "Someone left me a photograph." "My father did." She blinked. "Why would he?" "Because he always needs control. You're just his newest project." He turned, eyes dark with jealousy. "Don't think for a second that he cares about you. Everything he touches, he ruins." "Maybe that's something you learned from him," she said softly. His jaw tightened. The phone buzzed again, an incoming message from a blocked number. She caught a glimpse of the words before he turned away. "She knows. Get rid of her." The room spun. Ethan's hand shot out, gripping her arm. "Forget what you saw." She pulled back, breath trembling. "You don't scare me." "You should." He left her there, alone with the sound of the fire cracking and the echo of his threat. Sienna reached for her phone. No signal. Then footsteps again, the measured, deliberate pace she already knew. Richard. He entered quietly, eyes heavy, voice rough. "We need to talk about your mother." "You knew her." "I did more than know her," he said, each word a confession. "I failed her." For the first time, the walls of the mansion seemed to breathe. The storm outside began to rise. "You deserve to know the truth," Richard said, "but you won't like what it costs." The thunder rolled through the house as if answering him, and somewhere beyond the gates, a black car pulled into the driveway, its engine running long after the headlights died. "Stay close," he whispered. "Everything changes tonight. If you're still here, drop a comment with your city and the time you're watching, because what happens next, in that house on the hill, will turn every vow, every lie, and every secret into fire." The storm had returned, louder, closer. Sienna followed Richard into the old drawing room. It smelled of dust and something older, memory. He lit a lamp, and the glow fell over the framed photographs on the wall. For the first time, she noticed a face she recognized, her mother's smile, frozen beside a younger Richard Vale. "You worked together," she whispered. "She worked for me," he said. "She was brilliant, kind, too kind. The night she died, she was leaving this house." He turned toward her, and she could see it in his eyes, remorse, raw and real. "I thought if I buried the truth, it would stop haunting me," he said. "But you brought it back the moment you said her name." Lightning flashed through the tall windows. For an instant, two shadows stood reflected, one guilty, one broken. Sienna clutched the photo frame. "You're saying you caused the crash?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Upstairs, a door slammed. Heavy footsteps moved down the hall. Ethan's voice cut through the thunder. "Father, we need to talk, now!" Richard's shoulders stiffened. "Go to your room," he told her. "No, I'm done hiding." The doors burst open. Ethan stood in the doorway, rain on his jacket, rage in his eyes. "So it's true," he said. "You can't stop taking what's mine, even her." "This isn't what you think," Richard said. "No? Then explain why her mother's face is on our wall." Sienna's breath caught. Ethan's voice cracked. "You're obsessed. You always were. You ruin everything you touch." Richard's hand trembled. "I ruined her life, yes. I won't ruin yours." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Too late." The thunder rolled so loudly it seemed to shake the chandeliers. Sienna stepped between them, her voice barely steady. "Stop it, both of you." Neither man moved. For a moment the three of them stood locked in silence, the bride, the husband, and the father. Then a sound broke through the chaos, the soft chime of a phone. Ethan reached into his pocket. The screen glowed. A new message. "You think you know the truth? Check the files in the East Wing basement." His face drained of color. He turned toward the hallway. "Stay away from this," he said, but his voice trembled. He left, footsteps echoing down the corridor. Richard looked at Sienna. "What files?" "I don't know," she said, "but I think we're about to find out who's really behind all of this." Outside, the black car that had arrived earlier was still parked near the gate, engine silent, headlights off. Inside it, a woman's gloved hand rested on the steering wheel, her face hidden in the dark. The storm crackled again, and her whisper was barely audible. "Let the truth burn." The east wing of the Vale mansion had been locked for years. Dust lined the stairwell like forgotten time. Sienna held a candle in one hand, her other gripping the rail for balance as she descended. The air grew colder with every step. Behind her, Richard followed in silence, his flashlight trembling slightly. "Who keeps files in a basement?" she whispered. "A man who wants the world to forget," Richard said. The walls were lined with old filing cabinets, metal rusted at the edges. The beam of his light swept across labels written in neat cursive. Vale Logistics, 1998. Confidential settlements, legal disputes, private. Sienna stopped at one marked simply EB. Her fingers hovered above it. "Don't," Richard said. "Let me." He pulled the drawer open. Inside, a single brown envelope. He opened it carefully, and photographs spilled out onto the floor. Grainy, black and white, edges burned. One showed a car twisted around a tree, another a hospital bed, and in the last, a little girl, Sienna, sitting beside that bed, her small hand clutching her mother's. Sienna dropped the candle. Wax splattered across the floor. "You knew," she said, voice breaking. "All this time you knew." "Not until now," Richard whispered. "I swear to you I didn't remember. I tried to forget everything about that night." "You paid them off," she said. "My uncle, my family. You made them stay silent." He sank to his knees, the flashlight rolling from his hand. "I thought money could erase what I'd done." The air shifted behind them, a faint click. The sound of a door unlocking. Footsteps. Ethan stood at the base of the stairs, his expression unreadable. "So it's true," he said softly. "You killed her mother." "Ethan, listen to me." "No." He lifted his phone. "I already did what I had to." The sound of approaching sirens sliced through the night. Red and blue lights flashed faintly through the narrow windows. "What did you do?" Sienna demanded. "I called them," he said. "The police, the press. Everyone deserves to know who Richard Vale really is." Richard closed his eyes. "You don't understand, son." "Don't call me that," Ethan shouted. "You lost that right the moment you covered up a death." The sirens grew louder, tires on gravel, doors slamming. Richard looked at Sienna, eyes hollow. "You wanted the truth," he said quietly. "Now the world will have it." She shook her head, tears streaking down her face. "Not like this, not with hate." Above them, footsteps thundered as police officers entered the house. The storm outside cracked with new lightning, washing the mansion in white, and outside, in the black car by the gate, the gloved woman smiled, watching everything unfold on her phone screen. "Perfect," she whispered. "Now they'll destroy each other." A woman steps out, heels striking the wet pavement with calm precision. Her coat is dark, her movements deliberate, her presence the kind that bends air around her. She lifts her face to the mansion lights and smiles, a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Inside the mansion, chaos. Officers scatter through the halls, voices echoing, "Search every room!" Cameras flash as reporters push through the doors shouting Richard's name. The storm has turned into a spectacle. Richard stands in the foyer, coat unbuttoned, face pale but steady. Ethan paces near the stairs, phone still in hand, fighting the urge to look away from what he's done. Sienna clings to the banister, the candlelight flickering on her tear-streaked face. The front doors swing open. The woman steps inside. The crowd goes still. Even the officers pause. Richard's breath catches. "It can't be," he whispers. "You're dead." She removes her gloves one finger at a time, eyes fixed on him. "Almost," she says softly. "But not quite." Ethan stares. "Who are you?" "Your aunt," she answers. "Evelyn's sister." Sienna's knees weaken. "Aunt Claire?" Claire Brooks nods once. Her gaze shifts to Richard. "You think confession erases a crime?" He doesn't answer. He can't. She steps closer, her voice a whisper but sharp enough to cut. "You paid for silence. You built your empire on our grief. But you forgot one thing. Grief doesn't stay buried. It grows teeth." She pulls a folder from her coat, dropping it on the marble floor. Papers scatter. Bank transfers, old court documents, signatures, evidence, proof. "You ruined one life," she says. "You won't ruin hers." The reporters surge forward, questions firing. Cameras explode in flashes of light. Richard looks at Sienna, then at Ethan. "Take her upstairs," he says quietly. "Both of you." "No," Sienna whispers. "I want to hear everything." Claire's eyes soften just for a moment. "You deserve to," she says. She turns to the officers. "This is the man who ran down my sister and bribed his way out of justice. I want him arrested." The lead detective steps forward. "Mr. Vale, you're under arrest for the death of Evelyn Brooks and for obstruction of justice." Flashbulbs burst. Reporters shout. Richard doesn't resist. He holds out his wrists. "I've been in prison for 26 years, he murmurs. "This is just the first time someone's opened the door." They lead him out into the rain. Sienna watches from the landing, heart breaking and unsure why, because of what he did, or because of what he'd become. Claire glances up at her niece. "He deserves this," she says, but her tone wavers. Ethan takes Sienna's hand. "It's over," he whispers. She shakes her head. "No, something's wrong." Outside, as Richard is placed in the back of the police car, Claire stands by the gate, her phone buzzing again. A message flashes across the screen. "Transfer complete. Phase 1 succeeded." Her smile returns, slow, cold, victorious. "Good," she whispers. "Now for Phase 2. By dawn, the Vale estate looked like the aftermath of a war. Police tape across the gates, flashbulb scars on the marble floor, 1,000 whispered judgments carried away by the wind. Inside, the family portrait over the staircase had fallen from the wall, glass fractured through the father's face, slicing his reflection in half. Sienna stood at the top of the stairs, barefoot. Her dress wrinkled, her body exhausted. She'd spent the night replaying every word, every confession, every half-truth that cracked open beneath her. Ethan sat in the corner of the study, scrolling through news articles he couldn't stop reading. Vale Empire falls. Billionaire CEO arrested in 26-year cover-up. Each headline cut deeper than the last. "You should eat," she said softly. "How can I?" he muttered. "Every camera in the country's outside waiting for us to breathe wrong." She nodded, staring out the window. "Your aunt, Claire. She didn't just want justice. She wanted revenge." Ethan looked up. "You think she staged all of this?" "Someone sent that message to you. Someone sent that envelope to me. We've both been moved around like pieces on a board." He ran his hands over his face, groaning. "If you're right, then the real game hasn't even started." Down the driveway, a convoy of black cars rolled past the gate. Lawyers, shareholders, vultures in suits. The Vale name wasn't just scandal, it was currency. And someone had just seized the stock. On a television in the corner, a breaking news ticker scrolled across the screen. Brooks Holdings acquires majority shares of Vale Enterprises. New CEO announced, Claire Brooks. The sound of her name hit the room like a slap. Ethan rose slowly. "She took everything." Sienna's voice trembled. "This wasn't justice. It was a takeover." The screen showed Claire stepping out of a black car, reporters crowding her. She smiled as microphones surrounded her. "The Vale legacy will continue," she said, her voice smooth, confident. "Only now, in the right hands." "Hello, Sienna." Sienna froze. The whisper on the TV felt personal, deliberate. Ethan killed the volume, his pulse racing. "How does she even—" "She's been watching us," Sienna said quietly. She never stopped. A chill crawled through the room. Outside, the clouds thinned, letting in sunlight that felt too bright for what it touched. Sienna turned to Ethan. "She's not finished with us. Then we find out what she wants." He picked up the discarded envelope from the floor, the one marked EB inside, another folded paper. Not old this time. Fresh, clean, typed. "One of you inherits the empire. The other doesn't leave alive." The clock ticked once, then the lights went out. The power failure lasted only seconds, but the silence that followed stretched like eternity. Sienna and Ethan froze. Somewhere down the hall, a door creaked open on its own. The generator coughed once, lights returning in sharp bursts. Everything looked the same, yet wrong, like the mansion itself was holding its breath. On the desk, the envelope remained open, but something new lay beside it. Another slip of paper that hadn't been there before. A simple line typed in black ink. "Check the vault beneath the study." Ethan exhaled slowly. "That's impossible. No one knows about—" Sienna cut him off. "Your aunt does." They followed the instructions, moving a Persian rug aside to reveal a metal hatch set flush into the floor. Ethan keyed a hidden code into a panel behind the bookshelf. A faint click. The hatch release stale air rushed up from the dark below. He grabbed a flashlight. "Stay close." The stairs spiraled down into a narrow chamber lined with safety boxes and files, old records, contracts, documents sealed with the Vale insignia. In the center stood a single black safe, its surface polished and unmarked. A tag dangled from the handle, handwritten, "For Sienna." She stepped closer. Her fingers hovered above the cold metal. "Open it," Ethan said. She turned the wheel. The lock clicked open too easily. Inside was a velvet box, small enough to fit in her palm. She lifted the lid. A necklace glimmered inside, delicate, gold, identical to the one her mother wore in the photograph. Tucked beneath it, a flash drive. "Plug it in," Ethan said. He slid the drive into the laptop resting on the desk upstairs. The screen came to life with a single video file labeled June 14th, 1999. They pressed play. A dashcam recording, rain, headlights, a woman's scream, the impact. The camera tumbled sideways. Then, another set of headlights. A second car, not Richard's, Claire's. The recording ended abruptly, leaving only the sound of their breathing. Ethan's voice broke the silence. "She lied." Sienna stared at the screen, trembling. "She killed my mother, and let Richard take the fall." "She's been orchestrating this for years," Ethan whispered. "The marriage, the exposure, everything." Sienna's hands clenched around the edge of the desk. "Then we stop her." Ethan looked toward the window, where dawn was breaking over the city. The headlines outside were already rewriting their lives. "How?" he asked. Sienna turned back to the screen, replaying the footage frame by frame. "By giving her what she wants," she said quietly, "and making her confess to it herself." The faint hum of a phone interrupted them. A text appeared on Ethan's screen from an unknown number. "Meet me at Vale Enterprises. 10 a.m., come alone, or I finish what I started." Sienna looked at him, her expression calm but resolute. "You're not going alone." He nodded once. "Then let's finish it." By 10 a.m., Manhattan had turned the Vales into a spectacle. Reporters shouted over each other, cameras flashing, voices hungry for blood. "Billionaire heir returns to headquarters," one headline read. "Mystery bride missing," said another. Ethan's car slid to the curb, tinted windows hiding the tension inside. Sienna sat beside him in a black coat, face calm, eyes alert. Between them, the flash drive rested in her lap like a weapon. "You sure about this?" he asked. "She wanted us here. Let's give her a show." Security guards ushered them through the lobby, a cathedral of glass and marble now owned by Claire Brooks. Her portrait already hung above the reception desk. At the top floor, the elevator opened into the boardroom. Claire waited. No guards, no lawyers. Just her, a cup of tea steaming in front of her, calm as if she'd been expecting old friends. "You made good time," she said. "Traffic can be terrible this hour." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Why bring us here?" "Closure," she said. "For all of us." Sienna stepped forward, the flash drive between her fingers. "You killed my mother." Claire didn't flinch. "Did I? Or did your precious Richard finally confess?" Sienna plugged the drive into the screen at the far wall. The recording flickered to life. The rain, the crash, the second car. The dashcam froze on Claire's face, illuminated by lightning. Ethan spoke quietly. "You framed him. You built an empire on it." Claire smiled faintly. "Empires are built on graves, darling. Some of us just choose which ones." Sienna crossed the room, every step measured. "You destroyed your own sister's child to feed your ambition. You think I destroyed you?" Claire's tone sharpened. "I gave you purpose. Without me, you'd still be crawling in hospital corridors begging for help. Without you, my mother would still be alive." The room stilled. Outside, a helicopter's spotlight drifted past the windows. Ethan whispered, "It's over. The video's already been sent to every major network." For the first time, Claire's composure cracked. "What?" Sienna's voice stayed even. "You didn't just lose the company, Claire. You lost the story. People will know who you really are." Claire turned toward the window, the city sprawling below. "You think truth matters to them? They'll devour it for a week and move on." "Maybe," Sienna said, "but they'll never trust you again." Claire's shoulders sagged. For a heartbeat, she looked older, smaller. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled again, the expression returning like armor. "You're still playing catch-up," she said softly. "Check your bank accounts." Ethan frowned, pulling out his phone. His eyes widened. She transferred everything, every asset, every cent. Claire slipped on her coat. "While you were busy chasing ghosts, I moved the empire offshore. Justice is expensive, my dear. I prefer liquidity." She walked past them toward the elevator, pausing only once. "Give Richard my regards. He always underestimated women." The doors closed behind her. For a long moment, only the hum of the city filled the room. Sienna turned to Ethan. "She'll run. Then we chase her." Outside, sirens began to wail again, news vans speeding toward a new scandal. Sienna looked out over the skyline, the sun cutting through the haze. This isn't over, not until she answers for everything. Claire had always planned for flight, not escape, strategy. The private jet gleamed like a secret as she scrolled through the international transfer receipts. Swiss accounts, Cayman accounts, untraceable. The empire was no longer tied to her name. It was vapor, scattered like ash in the clouds she was about to disappear into. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Everything's ready, ma'am." "Good," she said, fastening her seatbelt. "And the files?" "Destroyed as you requested." She smiled faintly. "Not all of them." She opened her briefcase, pulling out one last folder. Inside were photographs, Sienna, Ethan, Richard, all marked with dates and notes in her handwriting. The final page bore a single line in red ink. "Blood restores blood." Outside, thunder murmured again, though the sky was clear. The pilot's voice came through the speakers. "We're cleared for takeoff." The jet began to roll down the runway, lights streaking by. Claire leaned back, closing her eyes, lips curling into the faintest smile. "Checkmate," she whispered. Across the ocean, in a dim control room at JFK's security hub, an alert flashed red on a monitor. A flight plan flagged for priority observation. Vale Enterprises subsidiary jet, destination Zurich. A voice over the comms. Intercept signal confirmed. Tracking in real time. Another voice replied. Who requested it? Anonymous submission. Encrypted source. Sienna stood by the window of her apartment, city lights glittering beneath her. On the table behind her, the same laptop played back the security feed from the Vale boardroom, the confrontation with Claire. She rewound it again and again, stopping on one frame. Claire's reflection in the window, her lips forming words before she turned. Not, "Give Richard my regards." Frame by frame, she zoomed in. There's another one. Sienna's chest tightened. Another one what? She murmured. Ethan entered quietly, coat still on, phone in hand. She's on a jet to Zurich. The FBI's got her on radar. Someone tipped them. Sienna didn't look away from the screen. Not someone. Me. He frowned. You? Before she left, I sent the footage to the authorities, along with the offshore coordinates hidden in her company's financial logs, but she left a message. Something doesn't add up. Ethan joined her at the window. What message? She replayed the final few seconds of the video. Claire's eyes glinted at the camera. There's another one. Silence. Then realization crept across Ethan's face. She's not working alone. No, Sienna said quietly. She never was. The phone on the table buzzed. Unknown number. Ethan answered. A distorted voice filled the room. You took the queen off the board, but the king is still alive. The call cut out. They stared at each other, the weight of the words settling like dust after an explosion. The king, Sienna whispered. Richard. He's in custody, Ethan said. He can't. No, she interrupted, shaking her head. Not him. Her eyes lifted slowly toward the skyline, where a billboard still displayed an old Vale Enterprises ad. Richard's face replaced by another man's, Daniel Vale. Ethan stepped closer. My grandfather. The ad flickered once, the slogan beneath it changing for a heartbeat before returning to normal. Legacy never dies. Sienna exhaled. Then neither does the truth. 2 months later, the city moved on. It always does. The Vale mansion was empty now, its windows boarded, its gardens left to weeds. The world had chewed up the scandal and spit out a headline, Justice served, fortune lost. But stories like this never really end. They just change shape. Richard Vale remained in custody, awaiting trial. Some said he looked older, smaller. Others said he looked relieved, like a man finally free from the weight of pretending. Claire Brooks never made it to Zurich. Her plane vanished off radar 90 miles from the coast. The wreckage was never found. Some called it divine justice, others called it design. Ethan Vale stepped down from the company, disappearing from the public eye. Rumors placed him in Boston, living quietly, working at a small foundation for accident victims. And Sienna? She walked again. The therapy Richard arranged before the chaos had started to take hold. She moved with a limp, but each step felt like victory. She rented a small apartment near the river. Somewhere the city's noise softened into a hum. On her table sat the necklace, the one from the vault. She wore it now, not as a reminder of loss, but of endurance. The gold caught the sunlight as she scrolled through the news one last time. Vale legacy officially dissolved. She smiled faintly. Good, she whispered. Let it rest. Outside, a courier approached her door. Delivery for Ms. Brooks Vale. She signed for it, puzzled. No return address. Inside the envelope, a single sheet of paper, 4 words, typed clean and centered. Legacy never dies. D.V. Sienna's fingers went cold. She looked out at the skyline, the wind stirring her hair. Somewhere far below, the city buzzed like a secret it refused to bury. She folded the note once and set it beside the necklace. Then she whispered, half to herself, half to the ghosts that still listened. If the past wants a fight, it knows where to find me. Every story leaves echoes, the narrator says. Some fade, some return, and some, like the veils, never die at all.